Marshall Applewhite was born on May 17, 1931, in Spur, Texas, into a deeply religious Christian family. His father was a Presbyterian minister, and religion played a central role in his early upbringing. From a young age, Applewhite struggled with his identity, emotional instability, and a constant search for purpose. He was intelligent, well-spoken, and deeply interested in music and theology. As an adult, he worked as a college professor and choir director, appearing outwardly normal and respected. However, behind this image, he suffered from depression, confusion, and a growing sense that he did not belong in the world. In the early 1970s, his life began to unravel after professional failures and personal crises. During this period, he met Bonnie Nettles, a nurse who shared his interest in spirituality and the supernatural. Together, they developed a belief system that mixed Christianity, science fiction, and UFO mythology. They believed they were chosen messengers sent to prepare humanity for a higher evolutionary level. Applewhite began calling himself Do, claiming he was a divine figure leading followers to salvation beyond Earth. They taught that Earth was about to be recycled and destroyed, and only those who followed them would survive. In the mid-1970s, they started recruiting followers across the United States through public lectures and meetings. They promised enlightenment, transformation, and escape from a corrupt and dying world. Their movement eventually became known as Heaven's Gate. Followers were told to abandon their families, personal identities, and material possessions. They adopted uniform clothing, identical haircuts, and strict daily routines to erase individuality. Sexuality was forbidden, emotions were suppressed, and obedience was absolute. Applewhite taught that human bodies were merely containers for souls. According to him, true believers would shed their physical forms and ascend to a spacecraft. After Bonnie Nettles died in 1985, Applewhite reinterpreted their beliefs rather than abandoning them. Instead of weakening the cult, her death strengthened his authority. He claimed her soul had successfully moved to the next level. This marked a turning point where Applewhite's teachings became darker and more extreme. He increasingly isolated his followers from the outside world. They lived communally, worked low-profile jobs, and avoided all media contact. In the 1990s, Applewhite began spreading a final prophecy. He claimed that a spacecraft was trailing behind Hale-Bopp comet. According to him, this spacecraft would take true believers to the next evolutionary level. He told his followers that their physical bodies could not board the ship. The only way to ascend was to voluntarily leave their human forms behind. This message was delivered calmly, repeatedly, and without visible emotion. By this point, Applewhite's followers trusted him completely. They believed death was not an ending, but a transition. In March 1997, the group rented a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. Inside that house, plans were finalized for what Applewhite called the departure. Followers recorded farewell videos explaining their beliefs. They expressed happiness, peace, and excitement about what they believed was coming next. On March 26, 1997, 39 members of Heaven's Gate ended their lives in a coordinated act. They consumed a lethal mixture of drugs and alcohol. Each person wore identical black clothing and Nike shoes. Purple shrouds were placed over their bodies after death. Applewhite was found among them, having died the same way as his followers. The event shocked the world and became one of the most infamous cult tragedies in history. Investigators confirmed there was no external force involved. This was not mass murder by outsiders. It was a mass suicide driven by belief, control, and psychological manipulation. Applewhite left behind extensive video recordings explaining his ideology. These recordings revealed how calm, logical, and persuasive he appeared. Experts later described him as a master manipulator rather than a violent leader. He never physically forced his followers. He convinced them that death was liberation. The Heaven's Gate tragedy became a landmark case in cult psychology studies. It demonstrated how intelligent, educated individuals can be drawn into extreme belief systems. Applewhite's story is now used as a warning in discussions about cult behavior and mind control. His legacy is not one of violence, but of influence taken to its most dangerous extreme. The Heaven's Gate case remains one of the clearest examples of how ideology can override survival instinct. It shows that when belief replaces critical thinking, reality itself can be rewritten. Marshall Applewhite did not promise destruction. He promised salvation, and that promise cost 39 people their lives.